Hello, dear learners. Welcome to another session of learning. Today, we're going to see a short story, a story of an hour written by Kate Chopin. So, this is an interesting story that is written by somebody from the 19th century. So, let's find out about Kate Chopin. So, Kate Chopin, also called as Catherine O'Flaherty, was born at St. Louis, Missouri on February 8th, 1850, and she grew up, in a French and English-speaking family, and she was bilingual and bicultural also. And we find that from 1867 to 1870, she kept commonplace books, and that's how she improved her quest for learning. And we find that her husband was Oscar Chopin, but he died when she was left a widow with five sons and a daughter. But still, with six children, she decided not to remarry, and then she turned her attention towards writing. And during her time when she was alive, people didn't recognize her writings. We see that she has written very prolifically, and her style, if we take a style, it is very descriptive and it's realistic and contemporary. That even it's also very modern. It is forward for her age, and we see that her works are even relevant in modern times. So themes and the issues that are dealt with in her work have a lot of relevance even in modern time. So let's move on to the story of an hour. So the story of an hour is about Mrs. Mallard, who is a heart patient, and what happens in time in her life. We find that her life goes through ups and downs. She goes through varied emotions, and I have jotted down four emotions that she goes through. First is sadness, next anxiousness, next happiness, and finally shock. So how does she travel through these various emotions? So the first emotion of sadness engulfs her when she hears the death of her husband. She gets to know about it from her husband's friend Richard, who happened to, get to know about the information that her husband had died in a rail accident. And he had conveyed it to her. And we find that her sister accompanies her, Josephine accompanies her, and is with her in this sadness. So the news of her husband's death puts her through a state of sadness. And then slowly, after some time, she retires to her room. And when she retires to her room, she asks her sister that she needs to be left alone. And as she's left alone, we see there's an anxiousness. She's observant about the things that are happening around, the nature that is around her. She can hear, the sounds that she can smell. Everything, her senses are at her highest. And over here, there's an anxiousness that's, you know, creeping up inside her as she's dealing with this news that her husband is no more in her life. And as she's, slowly thinking about it, something slowly creeps up, which is free, free, free. The words just escape her mouth, and in a state of sadness and anxiousness, this word of freedom creeps up inside her. And as this word, at first she's just, stunned at what she's experiencing, but then slowly transforms into happiness. The realization that she's finally free. She is in a marriage. She's been in a marriage for so many years, and she does not complain against her husband, but she says that there's this repression of feelings that she's been holding on in this marriage, that she desired to do something. As she's thinking of the years that are ahead of her, the youthful years that are ahead of her, and she decides that she will be all alone, that it will be time spent for herself. It will not be, spent for somebody else. So that realization that she is free, it takes hold of her, and there is happiness. So in the state of happiness, we see that she just composes herself, and then her sister comes and knocks on her door. She's really worried for her. Josephine is worried for her, and she tells Louis, come out. And here we get to know that her name is Louis, and she accompanies her sister, and as she comes down, and as she comes down, she's descending some stairs, and as she descends the stairs, something else also is happening simultaneously, because just as she's about to come down, she hears the opening, the knob opening of the door. The sound is heard, and in walks Mr. Millard. And Richard is trying to, somehow manage the situation, but he's unable to. finally, the story ends with that, she died. Mrs. Millard had died with, the reason being given as joy that kills. So, in a state of shock, the shock that her husband is alive, the shock that she has to go back to her own life, her old life, where she was, under her husband, where she has to go by his will. All those leaves her in a state of shock, and finally she does die. So we find that within 1 hour, everything changes. And here we realize that humans go through layers of emotions within over a stretch of 1 hour. And here we see that Mrs. Malad is a perfect example of how sadness, anxiousness, happiness, finally shock leads to death. So Kate Chopin has been, outspoken about Mrs. Malad's feelings in this short story. And I would like to turn your attention to some other important aspects that are dealt with by Chopin in this short story: repression. How when someone represses their emotions for such a long time, for making varied sacrifices, they are never content or happy. And that happiness and freedom comes only when they have that release. And over here we see that Mrs. Mallard's release is when she hears the news of her husband's death. So repression is a negative emotion and it needs to be dealt with. Second is whether marital life is a bliss or it has its blues. So Mrs. Millard, we see, she even refers that her husband was a very loving man. He was not somebody who was very violent, but it was it for a person looking from outside it was bliss. But only on further investigation, in-depth investigation, we get to know the blues of marital life, wherein it needs to be a 50-50 partnership, married life. It should be where both the emotions of both the partners are considered and the happiness of both are required. If it is lacking, then marital blues is a problem. Next, there's always this desire for freedom. Humans, wherever they are, they might get the fullest, the best, but still there's a desire for freedom. That man longs for freedom no matter what. She seems to be in a very content family life, but still that desire for freedom still keeps, you know, attacking Mrs. Malad. And then self-realization and introspection. This is very important for the modern day women. We need to keep introspecting. Are we in the right relationship? Are we expressing our emotions correctly? Are we valued? The self-realization of where we stand, what we do is very essential. And only when such emotional traumas or emotions or marital blues are dealt with in marriages can marriages be happy and successful. I'd like to conclude by saying that life is uncertain, live in the moment. And our society is an evolving society. We need to give consideration to everyone, no matter the gender, the color, the race. So here Kate Chopin talks about how women need to be considered in marriage. Thank you for listening.